As Mark says, I chair the Low Carbon Economy Committee here in the Liverpool City region, and I am really delighted by this event, and thanks to the guys at Holton for bringing it together. I also chair the UK HFCA, trying to persuade and or lobby for the hydrogen agenda at national government level. Varying degrees of success with that. Claire Perry, clearly that wasn't here with us, is doing a great job on that. So, but most recently, I'm the founder of UlemCo, and thanks to David, we're the company that can do the HGVs, and we can do them now. So hopefully I'll show you what we can do with that. Our company's based in Aintree in the Liverpool City region. So just to remind ourselves why we're talking about transport, transport is worth 23% of our global CO2 emissions. And according to the CCC and other global assessments, it's the area we've really not made much progress with. Just to remind ourselves that this climate change challenge is real and here and now, and we have to do something about it. But I was reminded earlier over coffee with a colleague that I used to work for when I was here at ICI, or work with when I was here at ICI, that we can meet environmental challenges. I sometimes think people think this is too enormous for us to deliver. But my first job actually was in the Arcton sales team here at the Heath, selling Arcton 11 and 12 CFCs. In most recent accounts, the prohibition and the movement away from the CFCs was entirely about making sure we stop the ozone layer and the hole in the ozone layer happening. And in the last few years, NASA and everybody tell us that we are solving that problem and that the ozone layer is closing up. So, fantastic news. We can do this. We can actually save our planet and still survive as businesses and still go about doing our normal lives, which is really, really, really important, because climate change solutions are not about us all having to go back to being in the dark ages and and it's important to remember that that's also needs to be done from a commercial basis. We've also talked here, and everybody else has talked a lot, certainly on the transport stage, about hydrogen, but it is important to remember that we need all tools in the kit, and I will come back to that later. No one in the fuel cell and the hydrogen sector, and I'll say fuel cell and hydrogen sector, and I'll explain why in a minute, is arguing that we don't need EVs. I drive an EV, it's a fantastic car. I do something like 12 to 15,000 miles a year in my EV. And it does a great job for what I needed to do. But when you start to think about longer range, buy a fuel cell electric vehicle. They are electric vehicle, full zero emission with fuel cell on, using the hydrogen to give you the range. And Toyota and Hyundai have two cars here. They're beautiful cars. They drive fantastically, zero emission cars. Buy one if we could get the hydrogen locally. But we also need to think about all these other transport applications, and Mike has described beautifully the opportunity for trains. Actually, there are, as you said, even other types of trains that you need to work on to enable us to decarbonise those. But our company's working in HGV and transport urban trucks. Significant proportion of our energy is going into these vehicles. And we need to convert them, and the reality is, as much as Mr. Tesla, Elon Musk will tell you we could have a battery truck, you would need so many, such a weight of battery in that truck to do anything near what you would do with a normal vehicle doing that operation, that the rest of us know that's bizarre. In fact, the other thing just to note, what is so exciting at the moment is a room full of 200 people, but actually globally, corporates, big corporate companies across the globe understand how hydrogen can help us decarbonise the energy system. There's a big organisation called the Hydrogen Council, of which some of the companies here are members of, but we know, and we are confirming, that hydrogen as part of the decarbonised solution could transform these applications for vehicles, and we need it now. Interestingly, though, I will again remind you, on HGVs at the moment, the EU, and one presumes the UK will follow the rule, have set a target that we need to reduce emissions from trucks. The OEMs would need to reduce emissions by 15% by 2025. Remember, 15%, not zero, 15% by 2025, and by 2030, 30% reduction. So I'm just going to set you that as a context. When we talk zero emission, and we've got some fantastic zero emission buses that will definitely be here now, commercially viable and doing what they do, there is a whole rest of the world that we need to reduce the carbon emissions for. So we're talking fleets of vehicles that need to reduce their carbon emissions. There are some places and routes where we can do electric. There are some places and routes where we would do fuel cell technology. But actual target is we have to deliver 15% from an EU basis by 2025. And I can tell you the truck companies don't know how to do that. Well, they do, because they need to understand where hydrogen would fit in that, but they really don't know how to do that cost effectively. So we can shove a load of batteries in, but that would just, not solve the problem. So, and the other bit that I also want to do is we've all been talking very high level, David and co, talking about lots of big gas pipelines and all that kind of stuff. But if you're a fleet manager of a vehicle today who does want to do something to alter the carbon emissions and do the right thing from an air quality point of view, he has some very real world issues to think about. The most important is cost. So everybody's talking about this. We are on a roadmap. There's no denying that if we could get to scale, we could make hydrogen technologies competitive to diesel. We all know that and believe that, and we've done loads of studies to prove that. But here and now, actually for the transport operator, it is more expensive. So we need help from the politicians and the leadership that we've been getting in places like Liverpool City Region. But the reality is we're trying to address cost. And we need to find a solution that's available now, because given these vehicle operators own those vehicles for nearly 10 years, some of them, they will be on the road by 2030. So we ought to be able to decarbonise them and reduce their emissions now. Set against that, however, when he goes to talk to the finance director in his fleet team, he could challenge the fact that a diesel vehicle might not be worth what he thinks it is when he looks at the 10-year financing cycle. So we can all remember that, and we can add a little bit of uncertainty that helps him understand that the diesel vehicle might not be low. Alternatively, we can find a way of making that diesel vehicle sustainable. There is clearly a driver from all of us to reduce emissions, but at the moment our customers paying for that. We have some customers using hydrogen dual fuel vehicles, which I'm about to talk about, where they win business because they deliver with a carbon reduction. And certainly suppliers to the public sector can help provide a service by reducing carbon emissions. So what's his options today, really today? Most, actually, for air quality drivers, and we've mentioned that, actually are required to convert to Euro 6 diesel. Do you know that most trucks aren't Euro 6 diesel? Because they've been on the road for 10 years. So there's actually an investment here that doesn't require all the, expensive technology we've just been talking about that they can go to. But the residual value of that vehicle, I don't know what it would be worth in 10 years' time if we could deliver what we're trying to do. They can go to, David mentioned it, natural gas. And actually what happens is, a couple of the OEMs are providing CNG vehicles. Not much choice. They're not that good on performance. They do okay. They do need refuelling in the similar way that we're trying to do with hydrogen into special refuelling systems. They will deliver some reduction in CO2, particularly for long range on the motorway. The Chancellor helps to support the cost of that by making that a little bit cheaper for them. But it doesn't really do that much to reduce CO2. The way that actually companies like John Lewis, and I'm told I think that's the right picture now, it might be the wrong picture, are doing it is they are doing it on gas certificates. Here's a clue here for the hydrogen system to make the pricing work. If we can put hydrogen in the gas grid, and we can get a certificate that tells that that's come from renewable sources, then actually we can help to decarbonise the transport fleet with hydrogen in a similar way we're doing with biogas. Because actually these vehicles just use CNG in the system, and they couldn't use biogas directly in the truck because their emissions wouldn't be right. No less they're using the gas grid to help them reduce the sulphur content of the biogas in the system and dilute it. You know, hydrogen is hydrogen, it really is very clean. So we have all sorts of opportunities associated with that. Then there's a load of talk, and I've already alluded to it, electric. They're prototypes and bling. So if I'm a real truck driver at the moment and I want, or operator at the moment, what might I do? Now, our company, as Mark has said, I am a fuel cell supporter. I love fuel cell technology, but I worked out I wanted to do something to get some vehicles on the road now. And the company that we work convert diesel vehicles, you can see a transit van outside, and we mix the hydrogen in the air inlet and we burn the hydrogen in the engine. And we have successfully shown that that technology can reduce air quality emissions, it can reduce carbon emissions, but more importantly, it can allow an operator to use a vehicle today and not have to have the concerns about the availability of the hydrogen, because if the hydrogen is not available, it will operate as the diesel vehicle, which reduces a massive barrier to entry for fleet deployment. It is burning hydrogen, and when you burn hydrogen, you do need to make sure and mindful of the emissions that you will get from that technology, but we are showing that we can significantly reduce emissions as a consequence. So what have we done? Well, our project is called High Time, because it's about high time we all get on with this job and do it. And we have deployed, and I'm delighted to see outside the BOC station at Fife, Mercoconic refuse trucks, Dennis Eagles in Westminster, Ocado refrigerated vans, patient transport vehicles for Yorkshire. That was the Grandon picture out there. He's collecting commercial waste from Heathrow Airport, and that's our van. More nice, pretty pictures, because it always makes it real, as we're trying to say. Aberdeen have two, soon to be more, hopefully, if they can get more hydrogen available, refuse trucks. So this is running day in and day out. The bin man drives this, and somebody asked me the other day about safety. You know, the bin man is driving this vehicle. He is completely comfortable driving the 100% hydrogen vehicle. He doesn't know it's any different. He fills up in the same way as he would normally fill up. My star vehicle is a road sweeper, and that's great because we're talking about back to base vehicles. He runs on a route round, does very nice and slow, and there's some stuff about hydrogen in combustion that says if I can do it in low speed and low load, then I use loads of hydrogen. As you push up the curve, we drop the hydrogen back off of it. But he gets about 30% of his energy, at least, from hydrogen on a regular route, day in, day out, using a very manageable amount and a clear amount of, but it's using miles of hydrogen to provide base load for the filling station. And these are the results. These vehicles, and actually this is not up to date, have saved tens of kilos, hundreds of kilos, 10 tonnes worth of CO2 saved since we started that project or more now. That's not in 2022, it's now. These vehicles are saving CO2 on the road, doing real world duties with the normal fridge delivery man driver, and this one's actually for London Fire Brigade. So, and at the same time, all of those vehicles are reducing NOx emissions. So here's just a snapshot of the NOx emission reduction that we can provide by putting hydrogen into a dual fuel, into a diesel engine. Okay, so a refuse truck, this is a real vehicle done under independent tests. That's on a Euro 6 refuse truck, so it's already a clean Euro 6 diesel refuse truck, 73% reduction on that cycle. So one of the most important things to do is understand the real world cycle. And just to set in context, more work from Element Energy. But in reality, this is the lowest cost-effective way now to reduce your CO2 emissions, assuming you've got competitive hydrogen price and the other things to go with it. None of these vehicles are actually available. There's 2 battery electric refuse trucks in the UK. The fuel cell ones, I think they're building 8 by 2023. There's possibly 1 demo vehicle about. Price for zero emission as opposed to 30–40% reduction. And just to set that in context on a fleet-wide basis, if you put 100 trucks on the road running with hydrogen dual fuel, you'll save 1 million litres worth of diesel, which gives you 30%, at least 30% less CO2, which is equivalent to 2,600 tonnes, and a 40% reduction in NOx. Now, why wouldn't you? But for the fact that we need the hydrogen refuelling available for us. Oh, and just a bit of a plug for the other van out there, which is a fuel cell van, range extended vehicle, Nissan EMV2 zero emission. And we're also doing a project to look at 100% hydrogen combustion trucks. So in summary, I would say, you know, all of us offer a route for real vehicles to reduce emissions from hydrogen today. We need the infrastructure to supply them and a bit of support, but not a lot, because actually all of us can show some commercially viable cases out of our business. Thank you.